Introduction, a conversation I'll never forget. The 74-year-old man sat across from me in the quiet of my clinic. His hands trembled, not from illness, not from physical pain, but from something far deeper, something he had carried silently for years. When his eyes met mine, eyes weathered by decades of life's storms, they began to well up. In a trembling voice, he said, "I don't know why I keep hurting myself." That sentence made me pause, not because I hadn't heard something similar before, but because every time a man finds the courage to speak such truth aloud, it touches something deep within me. I am Dr. William, a urologist and men's health specialist. For over 3 decades, I've listened to, cared for, and stood beside thousands of men like him. And I can tell you this, he is not alone. The confusion, the shame, the quiet feeling of being left behind, these are burdens many men over 60 carry in silence. What troubles me most isn't their physical condition, it's the misunderstanding. The belief that what they're feeling is normal, inevitable, something they just have to endure. They believe that when the body begins to change, when desire fades, it means they've lost their worth. But that's not the truth. That conversation with the 74-year-old man wasn't just a routine checkup. It was a wake-up call, a reminder that this man, like so many others, still had value, still had the capacity to connect, and still deserved to live fully with his emotions and identity intact. He had simply never been taught, never been given permission, never had someone truly listen and say, "You are still whole, you are still you." And that's why I'm sharing the story, not just as a doctor, but as someone who's witnessed the things society has avoided for far too long. The truth about aging, about intimacy, and about a longing that never truly fades. The misbelief. When erection is mistaken for manhood. Throughout my years of practice, I've spoken with hundreds of men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s. Men who came to my clinic not just for physical concerns, but carrying a hidden worry, a silent question they didn't dare speak aloud until they simply couldn't hold it in anymore. I remember vividly one winter afternoon. The 72-year-old man sat in front of me, his eyes fixed on the floor, shoulders slumped. After a long silence, he slowly lifted his gaze and asked, almost in a whisper, "Doctor, I can't perform like I used to. Does that mean I'm no longer a man?" It's not a question that surprises me anymore, but every time I hear it, my heart aches. Not from shock, but because it's a painful reminder of a false belief that has been planted in the minds of countless men throughout their lives, that masculinity is measured by the strength of their erection, that when that begins to fade, so does their worth. But what is the truth? The truth is, like many other biological responses, erections change over time. Our bodies age, blood flow slows, hormone levels fluctuate, nerve responses take longer. That doesn't mean you're broken. It doesn't mean you're past your prime. It simply means your body is changing, and that change is completely natural. More importantly, intimacy doesn't end just because erections aren't what they used to be. In fact, when a man learns to release the pressure to perform, to prove something, he often discovers a new kind of connection, gentler, deeper, and more real. Intimacy isn't born from physical perfection, but from presence. It's not about what you can do, but about who you can be in that moment. It's time we take off the old armor, the belief that manhood only exists when the body functions like it did at 25. Because if you believe your value only exists when you're hard, you'll miss out on the deeper opportunities for love, connection, and fulfillment that this stage of life has to offer. The truth is, you are still a man, erection or not. And once you truly understand that, the fear of change begins to fade. You begin to embrace this new phase of life, not as a loss, but as an evolution, one that still holds dignity, desire, and meaning. Secret number 1. Erection is no longer the center of your sexual life. For most of our lives, we men are taught that an erection is the centerpiece of every intimate moment. It's praised as the ultimate symbol of strength, masculinity, and a man's worth. But what no one tells you is this: that belief isn't always true, especially as you step into a new stage of life. I remember a 70-year-old man once said to me in my clinic, "Doctor, I'm not like I used to be. Does that mean my time is over?" I didn't look at him with pity, but with deep respect, because that question, though simple on the surface, carries the deepest fear of so many men, that if the body no longer responds like it once did, then love, intimacy, and even their identity as a man will slowly fade away. But here's the truth I wish every man over 60 could know. An erection has never been the whole story. True intimacy is not built on performance or endurance. It's born from emotion, connection, and presence, things we may not have fully understood or appreciated when we were younger. When the body begins to change, it's not the end of something. It's an invitation to begin something new, a new kind of intimacy, a new kind of love that's no longer defined by pressure or outdated expectations. You don't have to perform like before to love or be loved. You don't need a perfect erection to feel joy, closeness, or aliveness in moments shared with your partner, or even with yourself. In fact, when you stop measuring everything by how hard and start showing up fully in the moment, your sexual life can become more meaningful and profound than ever before. Because in the end, what we truly long for, especially as we grow older, is not a performance, but authenticity. Not a perfect response, but genuine connection. Not proof that we're still men, but a reminder that we're still whole. Your body's changes do not take away your manhood. They simply open the door to something different, where strength is no longer a requirement to be loved, but honesty is. Secret number 2. Masturbation is not just about sex, but emotion and psychology. When people hear the word masturbation, most immediately think of the physical act, something purely sexual, a way to release physical tension. But in reality, for many men, especially after the age of 60, masturbation holds a much deeper meaning. It becomes an emotional act, a coping mechanism, a quiet method of reconnecting with oneself in the stillness of life. I once met a retired veteran named Howard, nearly 80 years old. He didn't come to the clinic for a medical emergency. He came because, in his own words, "I just don't feel anything anymore." Not just sexually, but emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. He felt completely disconnected from his body, his mind, and from life itself. Through our conversations, I learned that Howard had a habit of masturbating almost every night, not out of desire, not for pleasure, but because it was the only moment he could still touch his own emotions. Without realizing it, he had turned to this act as a way to cope with lingering sadness, long nights of insomnia, and the quiet emptiness of a house that had become too still. What Howard and so many other men don't realize is this: masturbation is not only a physical release, it's directly connected to brain chemistry. It releases dopamine, which creates feelings of pleasure, serotonin, which stabilizes mood, and oxytocin, which fosters a sense of connection and calm. When done consciously, with presence and intention, masturbation can become a form of emotional self-care, a way to stay grounded amid loneliness and emotional fatigue. But when it becomes repetitive and unconscious, done without awareness, feeling, or meaning, it can slowly become empty, and that emptiness can slowly numb emotional response over time. Howard didn't masturbate because he felt desire. He did it because it was the only moment he allowed himself to feel something, even fleetingly. But over time, what began as a form of connection became a hollow ritual, a habit without meaning, performed on autopilot. And that's when he told me, I don't feel anything anymore. The important question is not whether you should or shouldn't do it, but how you do it, with awareness or without, with presence, or as a way to avoid what you're feeling. When you approach yourself with mindfulness, respect, and the understanding that this is part of your emotional experience, not something shameful, you turn a simple physical act into a deeply meaningful moment of connection with yourself. Secret number 3. Use it or lose it isn't just a warning, it's a silent truth. Roll, a 74-year-old man, walked into my clinic with hesitation. He wasn't there because of a serious illness, but because of something he had kept to himself for many years. I've finally found someone to love, he said, but my body doesn't work anymore. You could hear the sadness in his voice. He wasn't afraid of disease. What he feared was that the doors to intimacy in his life had closed permanently. Like so many older men, Roll believed that his declining sexual function was simply an unavoidable part of aging, that at a certain point, the body just naturally runs out of time. But the truth is, that's not how it works. A man's sexual function, just like muscle strength, memory, or flexibility, doesn't fade because of age alone. It fades from lack of use. When there's no stimulation, no regular blood flow, the tissues in the genital area begin to weaken, nerves become less responsive, and the tiny capillaries, the ones that nourish sensation, begin to silently shrink. Roll hadn't touched himself in years, not because he didn't want to, but because he thought it no longer mattered. He believed that with old age, desire naturally disappears, and that letting go was just part of the process. But inside his body, as with all men's bodies, the mechanisms were still there, waiting to be awakened. The good news? They weren't dead. They were simply asleep. When Roll began to reconnect with himself, not out of pressure or expectation, but with gentle curiosity and patience, his body started to remember. Each light touch, each moment of reconnection sent a quiet signal to his nervous system, I'm still here. And as if by some biological miracle, sensation slowly returned. His body responded, not instantly, but gradually and clearly. Because the body has memory, and that memory is not erased by age, it's only forgotten. With gentle, consistent, pressure-free stimulation, just presence, many older men can awaken feelings that have long been dormant. This isn't about reclaiming youth. It's about restoring connection, reviving sensation, and rebuilding self-respect. And that, I believe, is worth beginning, whether you're 60, 70, or far beyond. Secret number 4. When porn silently numbs real emotion. Monter, a 68-year-old man who had been widowed for many years, came to see me, not for a specific medical diagnosis, but for something more elusive. He said he still masturbated regularly, still experienced physical pleasure, but something had changed. I don't feel anything when I touch myself anymore, he said. Even when someone is actually there with me, I feel nothing. Monter's story is far from rare. Many older men have quietly confided in me that although they still maintain the habit of masturbation, they can only arouse themselves through pornography. Real-life connection, a touch, a look, or genuine closeness no longer stirs anything inside. And as we dug deeper, a painful truth began to surface. Porn had been silently reprogramming their brains for years. Porn isn't like real-life intimacy. It delivers a hyper-stimulating visual and neurological experience, a supernatural surge of dopamine the brain simply doesn't encounter in normal situations. And when this overstimulation becomes a routine, the brain gradually adapts to it. Ordinary experiences begin to feel dull, uninteresting, or even meaningless. The danger is that it doesn't happen overnight. You don't notice your imagination fading. Your body slowly becomes cold, and your ability to connect with a real person through touch, through presence, through emotion, grows more distant, more difficult. Monter once described the feeling as being trapped in a room with the lights on, but no windows. He could see, but he couldn't feel. Even though he still longed for connection, still craved intimacy, his biological response, conditioned by years of screen-based stimulation, no longer responded to real-world touch. When we began the process of detoxing by stepping away from porn, returning to his real body, his real breath, and gentle, mindful experiences, a quiet miracle began to unfold. Monter told me that after just a few weeks, he started to feel sensation again. He began to imagine intimate scenarios without needing extreme images, and most importantly, he began to feel alive. Porn is not the enemy, but when it becomes the only way you can feel something, it's time to pause and ask yourself, am I still connected to myself and to someone real? Secret number 5. Masturbation done right isn't shameful. It's a form of self-care. Liam, 75 years old, was a quiet, reserved, and polite man. He came in for his routine checkup, and everything looked perfectly normal. But just as the appointment was about to end, he hesitated, then softly asked me, "Doctor, at my age, is it still okay for me to touch myself?" That question made me pause, not because it was strange, but because I've heard it so many times. In that moment, I didn't just see one man asking a question. I saw an entire generation of men who had grown up in a culture that taught them to hide their emotions, to see desire as shameful, to believe that at a certain age, longing should go silent. What Liam didn't know was that what he was asking wasn't just about a physical act. He was really asking, do I still have the right to connect with myself? Am I still allowed to feel, to desire, to be fully alive, even if I'm alone? And the answer is absolutely yes. Not only are you allowed, you truly should. When masturbation is approached with intention, presence, and gentleness, it is not sinful or shameful. It becomes an act of self-care, physical and emotional care. It helps keep the pelvic tissues and prostate functioning well. It promotes healthy blood flow, clears fluid buildup that could cause inflammation, and stimulates the release of dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin, chemicals that boost mood, improve sleep, and reduce anxiety. But more than anything, it's a moment to remind yourself that you are still you. That inside you there is still a part that wants to feel, to be present, to be close, even if that closeness is simply with yourself. That you don't need a partner to be allowed to connect with your body, and you don't need to be 30 again to have a rich emotional life. Liam told me that after his wife passed, he stopped everything. 6 years passed in silence and emptiness. He said, "I thought that chapter of my life was over." But once he was gently encouraged to reconnect with himself, without pressure, without judgment, he began to smile more, sleep better, and feel alive again. Masturbation is not an escape. It can be a return. A quiet way of saying to yourself, I'm still here. I still matter. and I still deserve to feel this life in my own way. Final message. Growing older is not the end, but a new chapter waiting to be written. I've spoken with hundreds of older men, and there's one phrase I've heard again and again in what seem like ordinary conversations, a familiar sentence, spoken softly, but carrying the weight of a quiet resignation. Maybe my time is over. Many believe that when they can no longer achieve erections like they once did, when desire no longer surges like it did in youth, when their body's responses begin to slow, then surely their sexual life, and even more broadly their emotional life, has come to a close. They don't always say it aloud, but deep down they believe they've crossed a line, out of vitality. But the truth is this: desire doesn't disappear. It simply changes form. And most importantly, you are still here, with a changing body, a heart that still feels, and a soul that still deserves connection. Aging is not a sentence of isolation. It's a turning point, an invitation to see yourself with different eyes, gentler, more patient, less judgmental. It's time we stop comparing ourselves to who we were back then. Time to stop measuring ourselves against the standards of a 30-year-old body. Your body isn't what it once was, but it is still yours. It still knows how to long, how to feel, and it still deserves to be touched with understanding and respect. The 5 secrets I've shared with you aren't medical tricks. They're not promises to make you young again. They are vital truths gathered from decades of listening to and walking beside brave men, men who dared to face change head-on and through it rediscovered something powerful. A deeper connection not only with others, but with themselves. If there's only one thing you take from this conversation, let it be this: you have never lost your worth. You have never run out of time. You are simply entering a new chapter, where slowing down gives you the chance to feel more deeply, where patience opens the door to more genuine intimacy. Live with your body as it is today, instead of longing for what it used to be. Listen to it, reconnect with it, and more importantly, never feel ashamed for wanting to live fully. Because sometimes, just when you think it's too late, that's when life truly begins again. Quietly, steadily, and beautifully. Before we wrap up, I'd like to invite you to do something small, something that could lead to a big shift. If any part of these 5 secrets spoke to you, even just a little, leave a comment below. Share what made you pause, what made you reflect, or what brought you a sense of comfort. And if you believe this conversation might help someone else, a friend, a loved one, or even the version of yourself from yesterday, don't hesitate to share this video. Sometimes a short message is all it takes to open a new chapter in someone's life. Lastly, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. I'll be back with more honest, deeper, and more personal lessons, crafted especially for men like you. You are not alone.